Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Christine and I like to read dark and disturbing things. Today we're going to be talking about everything I read in the month of August. So we are finally in the Burr months. We are in September. I am so happy. I just cannot wait for the weather to catch up and realize that it can stop summering outside. I know it's still technically summer, but I've had enough. If you hear a noise in the background, I do have my air conditioner on, and it is because it's like 95% humidity outside today. I don't know what's normal in other places, but my hair is just, by the time I'm done with this will just be puffed out, and I just feel gross in my own skin, and I am just done. I'm done with summer. Kids are back to school, and let's just move on with our lives, okay? But we still need to talk about what I read in August, and I read a total of 12 books. 6 of those I previously owned before the start of the year, so I get to mark them off of my physical TBR. I had 2 DNFs and I read 0 arcs this month. As far as the DNFs go, I actually have a couple soft DNFs I'm also going to talk about. And there may be some books in here that I can't really discuss in this video because they're going to be coming up in the future in a vlog or something. But I will let you know what those are. So let's talk about the DNFs first. The first DNF, sorry if you see me looking to the side, I don't have this book. It was from the library. Was A Sky Full of Elephants by Sibo Campbell. Now, I did kind of go through a period where I was trying out a bunch of audiobooks and I just felt like I could not get into any of them, or I did at the beginning and then I just couldn't continue on. Audiobooks are very difficult for me to connect with. I think I have a problem listening and absorbing that information, because my mind tends to wander. I definitely had a hard time in school. But this book for me, maybe it is because it's an audiobook, I don't know. But this is a book about one day, and I'm not sure if it ever discusses why this happens. I feel like I listened to this like ages ago, even though it was just probably only a few weeks ago. All of the Caucasian people in the world end up dying. They all are under some kind of mental influence that just makes them all get up and go into the nearest body of water and just keep walking until they are drowned. And if I remember correctly, we are doing a couple different POVs in this. One of them is the daughter of one of these white women that has passed away, as well as the rest of her family. Because she was actually biracial, she was able to stay alive. I don't know, I had a lot of questions. And the other point of view was that young girl's father, who is Black, and had some kind of complicated relationship with her mother. She's never known her father, but she somehow looks him up and asks him to come to her in this kind of dystopian world almost. I feel like I'm describing this really badly because I don't remember it super well. But anyway, he's on his way to her and they meet up and things go from there. I DNF'd this at 20%. I just felt like this was not very genuine. I actually had to, I was listening to it while I was going for walks. I had to stop and look up the author to see if the author was white, because it just, I'm not trying to piss anyone off, but it didn't feel genuine to me, and I just had issues with it. I couldn't continue. It was making me upset. I had a lot of questions. Like, I'm wondering, maybe because I'm a horror reader, I'm like, are all of these bodies just like millions of bodies floating in oceans of water? Like, I don't know if any of these questions were answered further on. Maybe they were, but something about it just didn't feel right. I couldn't continue. The next book I DNF'd was Freakslaw, which kind of stinks because it was one of the books I was most looking forward to coming out. I wanted to do a carnival reading vlog, which I don't know, maybe I will still do it. I'm looking over at the other books over there just staring at me. But this one I DNF'd at 30% because there were about 1 million characters and you're getting the point of view of all of them and you're not really getting to know any of them. So I got 30% into the book and I didn't even get to the plot yet, which I could be fine with in other books if the character development was there, but I just felt like I was getting such little snippets of so many characters that I couldn't connect. So I knew it just wasn't going to be for me, and I DNF'd it. I also had two, what I would like to call soft DNFs, that I started listening to, even though I own copies of them, just because, like I said, I was trying to find something to get into audibly. The first one was The Undertaking of Hart and Mercy. I got to page 59. This one may very well be a full-on DNF. This looks like it's supposed to be a romance book, but in this world where I don't even know, it's in a different type of world, and I never really fully grasped what was going on, and that could be my fault. If I remember right, the female in this situation is an undertaker, so dealing with dead bodies, that kind of thing, and the male in this situation I don't think was human, and maybe has something to do with saving souls. I could be totally wrong. I was having a hard time understanding the world. I don't think it was really giving me what I needed to know, and maybe I needed to get further, but it was a little cringy, and I just was like, maybe I will try it in like reading this with my eyeballs and see if I can get into it. If not, this is going to be a full-on DNF. Another one that I was into for quite some time while I was listening to it is Betty. This has been on my TBR for a long time. This is like a coming of age story. I got to page 92, and I think I will end up liking this, but I need to read it with my eyes. So I am setting these two aside to give another shot. They're not like a full-on DNF, but I wanted to mention them. All right, what did I actually read? I read Eat the Ones You Love. I did talk about this in a vlog in detail, so I will link that down below. I believe I gave this 3.5 stars, rounded up to 4. This, I went into thinking it was going to have like Little Shop of Horror vibes, because we do have a plant that eats people. And we are getting the story from the point of view of the plant, which I found very fascinating. However, the main focus of this isn't so much on the plant as it is around the lives of the people that work in this plant shop, and their like romantic / friendship lives outside of work. And I think it depends on what you're expecting when you go in, if you will enjoy this. I still ended up enjoying it okay. It wasn't exactly what I wanted. I really wanted to lean into that darker horror side of it, and I didn't quite get that. It was more kind of like slice of life type stuff with friendships and relationships. And if you are into that, you will probably like it. It was okay for me. I'm not mad that I read it, but it wasn't exactly what I really wanted. The next book I read wasn't really on my TBR, but I decided that I wanted to get to it this summer, and I thought it was actually perfect for Garbaugust, which is where you read kind of trashy books. And I do think that this is a trashy, fun book. And this is The Drive-In Part 2 by Joe R. Lansdale. I read the first one a couple years ago, and I really, really liked it. So this is a sequel. I don't know that I could say a ton about it, but in the first book, we have a group of friends who go to a drive-in, and they end up getting stuck there because the rest of the world just kind of disappears. So the only thing, like if you try to leave the drive-in, it's just like black abyss. You just like fall off the end of the world or something like that. And all the people in the drive-in have to survive, and it's just like the chaos that ensues, and just the craziness, the zaniness. There's aliens involved, and it was really just a fun time, and just all the stuff that happens while they're in this drive-in. Part 2 is they actually get to leave the drive-in, and it's just kind of what takes place from then on. This one was definitely more fever dreamy, which I don't usually love in books, because I feel like, I think fever dream books are a bit of a cop-out in that you can write anything you want and it doesn't necessarily have to make sense. And I know some people like that. I want it to be based in some kind of, I want it to be based in reality, or have some kind of rules to the world, I suppose, even though a bunch of zaniness is happening. I know that doesn't make sense, but I got a little bit lost in part of this. And I think that's because part of this, it comes from, most of it is like from our normal point of view. And then we get like a different point of view, or someone that they come in contact with, that they become friends with, that's telling their story. And I just got a little bit lost, and my mind started to wander while I was reading it. And then I came back to the end, and it was still a fun time. I did like the first one more. I think there's a part 3, but I don't own it, so I'm not sure that I will seek it out to finish it. It probably could have just stopped at part 1 and I would have been happy, but I think it was fine. I give it 3.5 stars, rounded down to 3. It is just a fun little summer read. Next up is one of the books that I don't really want to talk about. I'll just let you know that I read it because it is coming up in a vlog. I did vlog while I read this. I just need to vlog a little bit longer to read some more new releases. And that is When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. I am currently in book 2 of that vlog, and I hope to squeeze one more in so that I could put together 3 new releases from 2025 that I kind of share my journey with you as I'm reading it. And this is the first one of that little vlog. Look, I'm gonna be honest with you. I started a lot of vlogs and I have all this like footage on my phone, and I don't know what's gonna happen. One of them is definitely coming out next week because I have finally finished it over months. But when I get an idea for a vlog, I hate to like sit and read like, okay, these are the 3 or 4 books you're gonna read for this vlog, because then it feels like homework and I don't want to do it. So I think of like these themes, and then I get to them when I get to them. And that's where we're at. The next book I read, or I should say I finished, I think I was like on page like around 160 when the month started, but this is a fatty. This is The Hunger of the Gods by John Gwynne. This is the second in a trilogy. What was the first one? Shadow of the Gods? Yeah, Shadow of the Gods. I did a whole like review video on that, and I will link that down below. I heard that a couple years ago. It was probably the beginning of my booktube experience, most likely. So if you're interested, you could check that out. But this is a series of 3 books. This is a dark fantasy series, and we have this world where there are these, oh gosh, where do I even start? This world where there were these gods that were huge animal gods, and they all ended up dying, killing each other off. And what remains today is a world where humans are in charge, and anyone that is a descendant of one of these gods that has some kind of like magical abilities is captured as a slave with like this device that goes around their neck that prevents them from using their magic abilities unless they are ordered to by the person that pretty much owns them. In the first book, we are following 3 different main characters, and it kind of switches each chapter from point of view to point of view that are nowhere, that don't even know each other. And we're getting to know their stories, and we're getting to know this world and how everything works. This picks up after that. And because it had been, I don't know, 1.5 to 2 years since I read the first one, I was very glad that there was a chunk in the beginning of the book that like kind of recapped what happened. It also has a little bit of a glossary. Is that the right word? It gives you like the cast of characters and the different types of creatures in this book. And I will say that there's a lot. And while I felt that the beginning was helpful to kind of recap, there was a lot of stuff that I probably didn't remember, and I kind of picked up as I went along. I was definitely more connected to the 3 characters that I remembered from the first book. This one definitely expands beyond that, and we're getting the point of view of some newer characters. And this is kind of where some of the characters start to maybe cross paths. I would say that I did like the first one better because it did focus a little bit more on getting to know 3 characters. I am a character-driven reader, but John Gwynne definitely likes to write some action scenes, some battle scenes, and this one was a little bit more about the action than it was about the characters. Hopefully in part 3, we kind of bring it back into the characters' lives. I'm hoping. Don't get me wrong, I do love his action scenes. They are very cinematic, like I could picture them most of the time. And I don't think it's a secret since it's on the cover, but some of these gods are coming back to life, or being brought back to life. And I think that we're gonna have an all-out battle in the third book. So I definitely will finish this series. I think that I would give this 3.5 stars. I would still round it up to 4 for Goodreads. I had a fun time, but it is a lot of names, and I will say a lot of the names are somewhat similar, or at least in my mind they are, and there were times where I was a little bit confused, but in the end it worked out. All right, the next book I read is a book that I don't own physically, but it was on my e-reader, and that is Black River Orchard by Chuck Wendig. This is the second time I'm reading this author this year. This is a new author to me. I read The Staircase in the Woods earlier in the year. That was kind of like a dark fantasy book that I gave 4 stars. This entire book, and by the way, let's see, it's pretty long. Let me look. So the hardcover is 640 pages, so it is pretty lengthy. This is all about an evil apple orchard. And it's crazy to think that you could write a book that long about apples, but Chuck Wendig did it. First, I just want to say that I really loved his writing in this. I enjoyed it even more than the first one. It definitely, I hate to say this because I feel like this is a cop-out, and it's gonna maybe turn some people off, but it did give me like Stephen King vibes, and that he really goes into the detail behind each of these characters. The characters all felt very real to me. He took his time, nothing was rushed. And because this takes place in a small town, it definitely gave me those Stephen King vibes, because a lot of the books that I've read of his take place in a small town where everyone kind of knows each other and there's, you know, small town shit happening. There's not a ton I can really say or spoil about this book, because it really is in the journey of reading it, which I know sounds weird, but basically we have someone who has discovered a new type of apple, or really it is a very, very old type of apple that has kind of been lost but has been brought back. So he grafts like the branches of this apple tree and he starts his own orchard, and he doesn't know what's going to come about, but he ends up making these really delicious apples called ruby slipper apples that he just thinks is the most delicious thing that this farmer's ever tasted. He brings them to a farmer's market, and everyone that tries this apple becomes addicted to them, and they can't get enough. Over time, people start acting a little bit different after eating these apples, and things kind of go from there. I learned a lot about apples in this book. And now when I actually go to purchase apples, I'm like looking at the different types, and I'm just like, this is a crap apple. This is not a good apple, according to Mr. Chuck Wendig. And it's just kind of a weird thing. But this is obviously a perfect fall read because it's about an apple orchard. And if you have the time to dedicate to a book, if you don't mind kind of a slow burn where you're just sitting in the story, sitting within these characters and not caring about getting into like crazy plot things happening, then this book would be for you. There were a few things that kind of turned me off in this book a little bit, and that's why it's not a 5-star read for me. I think it's closer to a 4-star, even though I did enjoy it more than Staircase in the Woods, I believe. Just a smidge. I would have to say that I think Chuck Wendig must have children that are like in the Gen Z generation, and I felt like he really was trying to prove that he could use all of like the slang or the lingo that these kids are using these days, because while it made sense some of his characters were of that age to be using that, I felt like he was really trying to prove like, oh no, I'm super progressive and I know all of these things, and it was a bit much for me. Even though we may agree on the same side of politics, I don't really like to see some of that like put into these books. So Stephen King has done it, and now Chuck Wendig has done it, and it's just, I read to escape a lot of that shit because it's just too much right now. So I would rather it not be in there at all. We definitely have an interesting cast of characters, and because of that, I think that some of this was like trying to prove like, oh, I'm so open-minded, and I don't know, it seemed like it was a little much, even though I agree with the way that he thinks. I would rather it be left up to the reader to make their decisions about people. That's all. I hope that makes sense. But overall, I really did enjoy this. This was a 4-star read. It's definitely not, it's something I took my time with. It was something I just read every night before bed, and I will definitely look at apple trees a lot differently. The next book I read was on my summer TBR last year, and then it was on my summer TBR again this year, but I actually got to it, and that is The Deep by Alma Katsu. Now, I know of Alma Katsu as a horror writer. This is a story about a woman that was on the Titanic, and she survived, spends her time the 4 years in between the Titanic event and what's going on now in a mental institution, and is deemed that she is healthy and is told that she is released. So she ends up getting a job as a nurse or a nurse's aide on the sister ship of the Titanic called the Britannic, and which is a hospital warship. So they're taking in soldiers and they're trying to mend them back to health. And she is one of those nurses' aides. So she's on this ship that looks identical to the Titanic in a lot of ways. It doesn't have all of like the opulence and the, you know, chandeliers in the ballroom that the first ship had, but structurally it is the same with some improvements to make it more unsinkable. So this takes place in dual timeline. We are in the present where she is working, and then she starts flashing back to fill us in what happened during her first voyage on the Titanic. And it kind of ends up staying in that timeline a lot more, because we need to know what happened on the Titanic in order for it to make sense in the current timeline. And let me just say, this is definitely a slow burn. I kept waiting for this paranormal stuff to happen or something weird to happen, and I just kind of was left wanting a lot. So I think this is a very interesting premise, the setup of this book, and I was into it at the beginning, but then it really kind of ended up being a lot about the different, the help on the Titanic and the different workers there, and kind of like their little personal dramas, as well as the people that they are serving, you know, the rich folk on the ship that are having their own little personal dramas. And it seemed to me to be more about like this kind of soap opera thing going on with these different characters than it did about why we were here to start with. And I just wasn't into that. It wasn't for me. I definitely thought this was going to lean more horror, and it didn't. I guess there's some paranormal stuff in here because they do like a seance and things like that. But for me, this one really let me down. I want to give it 2.5 stars. I will round it up to 3 for Goodreads, only because I learned something from this book. And I actually had to ask my husband, because I felt like a stupid American. I was like, was there really a sister ship to the Titanic called the Britannic, and that also sank? And to be fair, he's Canadian and he did not know that either. So I don't know if this is common knowledge and I'm just an idiot, but I did not know. You think we hear and we actually learn about the Titanic in America, or at least in my generation we did, but I don't remember hearing anything about its sister ship also sinking. I understand it was in a much different situation and not as many people perished. However, you think that that would be brought up, like, oh, by the way, we tried to improve on the ship and it still managed to sink. Not really the ship's fault, but I thought that was interesting, and I guess I learned something. So I will round it up to 3 for actually learning actual history. This is a historical fantasy book, a historical fiction. It wasn't for me, and I will be unhauling it. And the last book I'm going to be talking about today is my next attempt at reading an underwater book, and this is a middle grade book called Dark Waters by Catherine Arden. This is the 3rd book in the series of Small Spaces, and it took me into this 3rd book to realize that each book actually has a different season that it follows. So the first book, Small Spaces, was fall. The next book that was a winter book, this was a spring book, and then the last book I have to read, I'm looking over there, it's Empty Smiles, is going to be a summer book. And there's just those 4 books that the series does not continue. So I thought that was pretty clever to do. Took me till book 3 to figure that out. Because it's the 3rd in a series, what can I say, but we're following our same group of friends. And this time they're just going on a little boat trip with their families. So their parents are there and they end up in a situation where they are stuck on an island. And that's just where I'm gonna leave it. I really love the first book in the series. The second one I was a little bit bored, but I did listen to it through audio. This book, I would say, did not like quite as much as the first book, but I did like it better than the second book. And it kind of leaves you hanging, so you want to know what's going to happen in the fourth book, which I hope to read for my carnival vlog if that ever happens. So I think I would give this 3.5 stars. It was a fun addition to the series, and yeah, I had a fun time. And the last book was the Fright Club book club pick for August, which was Sphere by Michael Crichton. That is the author also of Jurassic Park. We should be having our live show coming up soon. I don't know if it's going to be this coming Sunday or the Sunday after, because it took Cliff some time to get the book shipped to him. Unfortunately, it was not available through his e-reader, and he had to have it imported, which I feel kind of bad about. We went for underwater horror, and I would say that it did kind of fit that. It was a little bit more of a sci-fi / horror book when a team of people go underwater in the South Pacific because they have found a foreign spaceship underwater, and they have this team of people that are going to open it up and explore it and see what has come to visit us and didn't quite make it to land. So we will be talking about that in the live show. I will make a post once I know when that show is going to happen, and we can talk about it then. Overall, I guess August was okay. I had some books that I enjoyed. I had some books that I didn't, but I DNF'd them, and that was fine. My favorite book was probably When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy, the one I didn't talk about. I hope to get that up by the middle of September, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Maybe hit the little notification bell if you want to hear about that one. But that is everything I read in the month of August, and now I'm ready for fall / spooky season. You know, I'm always ready for spooky season, but I enjoy it a little bit more when the air is crisp and it's raining outside, because I live in the Pacific Northwest and it's always raining, and I just stay home, stay inside. I don't feel like I should be outside. I could be just being lazy and cozy in my home with a warm drink. So I am very excited for that. Let me know down below what your favorite read of August was, and if you've read any of the books I read, if you have any opinions on them, I'd like to hear them, especially if you don't agree with me. I like to see the other side of what people enjoy about something that maybe I didn't. And I will see you guys in the next video. Stay spooky.